Hi, welcome. It is May 31st. It's the last day of May, and we are continuing to move through Proverbs. And today we're going to look at chapters 14, 15, and 16. And I really enjoy approaching the Proverbs kind of in chapter formats because there tends to be themes which run through each of these chapters, and certainly they carry on through the others as well. But you can kind of pick out some things that if you put it all together and you go back and read the individual Proverbs in that chapter, it helps to lend more, make more sense of what is actually being taught here. Now, as we go through that, in this case today, we look at chapter 14, and first of all, we hear this two themes running through this. Number one, a fear of the Lord, and number two, control of self. And this fear of the Lord kind of pervades all of the Proverbs. It appears in chapter 1, verse 7, and chapter 9, verse 10, here in chapter 14, verse 2, and in many other places throughout Proverbs. And what it's meant to do is kind of give us an overarching way to view all of these Proverbs, because the reality is, without the fear of the Lord, we will not really gain wisdom, no matter how sly, cunning, or any other kind of human way of living in the world we develop. It will not truly be wise. And so, how does this fear of the Lord get displayed? Well, this chapter points some things out to us. Number one, it gets displayed in how we learn faith. First of all, short of some special mystical experience in prayer or intervention by God, we learn through preaching and teaching. We learn because we sit at the foot of an instructor and they impart the truth of the scriptures to us. So before there can be wisdom, there must be a willingness on our part to sit at the feet and be taught. And that kind of goes hand in hand with the idea that before there can be honor, whether it's in battle or in other acts, there first must be humility, learning at the foot of an instructor. So those two things go hand in hand, first of all. Second thing we learn about the fear of the Lord is that as we possess that fear of the Lord, first and foremost, it will then bring us to a point of mercy on God's behalf, because we will have a contrite heart before God. We will know God for who He is and us for the sinful creatures we are. In that sense, then there is that taking away of sin and that obedience that follows. And the third thing here is that we need to understand that the fear of the Lord is more valuable than all treasure. Not that other treasures aren't valuable, but we need to understand that it is this fear of the Lord that puts in our hearts and minds a readiness to receive instruction, to be contrite towards our sin, and then to receive not only forgiveness but training and ultimately satisfaction in what we do by having this fear of the Lord. So it really sets our hearts and minds right for how God works in us. So now, without it, the Bible here in Proverbs also speaks about and uses words to describe what the opposite would be. Words such as wicked, fool, death, undisciplined, a claim to be self-sufficient, and wrathful. All of those things kind of give us the opposite picture. So, chapter 15 now, we move on. And here we see a discussion on our speech and on our prayer life. I think of it in terms of our words and our heart, our mouth and our heart. And it immediately reminded me of Romans 10, verse 9, where the Apostle Paul says that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. And I think this chapter really brings to light the fact that the heart and the mouth are tied together. You can kind of fool people sometimes, and for some of the time, if your heart is impure by what you say, but eventually it will start coming out. And so therefore, if you have a problem with your speech, with what you say and do, it really stems from what's in your heart, and that's where you need to examine yourself. And that brings us back to the fear of the Lord in chapter 14. Finally, in chapter 16 today, we have this idea of who's in charge anyway. And when an election year, it's particularly appropriate for us to talk about this. There is a dual authority under God as we live in this world. First of all, we have God's divine sovereignty, but we also, as human beings, live under control of a government. In the case of the Israelites, it was kings, and in case of us, it is a representative republic. Now, what we need to remember, and what the Bible here in Proverbs, some of these verses so aptly put out and remind us of, is it's not equal authority. The king must first realize that he is dependent upon God, and everything is done for God's purposes. I love chapter 16, verse 1, which really reminds us the outcome is decided by God. His tongue, not our plans and preparations, is what will rule the day. A king is given authority such that he gives favor just by a look on his face. That's the kind of authority he is given from God. And that's that idea of how his look, his countenance, very much helps us to understand that the king is given great authority. However, he must also remember that his authority comes from God, and he needs to act justly. And another verse that I would share with you that kind of relates to this, and which I think really helps us as we understand, well, where should our loyalties lie, is in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 17, where we hear these verses placed in order concerning how we view government and how we view God, especially in a country where we hear this separation of church and state so often spoken about. Well, the reality is in 1 Peter 2, verse 17, what we are taught is that here's the order in which we learn to live. Number one, we show proper respect to everyone. We honor all people, first and foremost. Number two, we love the brotherhood. We love family. We love our church. We love those with whom we have a common bond. Number three, we fear God. We must fear God. That needs to be in there as soon as we understand who we are, and we love and honor those around us. We love God and fear Him as well. And the fourth thing then is we honor the king. So that's the order we follow these. We don't honor the king first or even second. We honor the king after we love and honor those around us, and we fear God. The king actually comes in fourth place. And so I think as we think about even our country, the United States of America, and how many and how all of us love it, the truth is it cannot take precedence over our need to love one another, to honor others, and to fear God. And so maybe it helps us in terms of where we put our greatest loyalties in our lives. But I thought those were some interesting facts today and thoughts regarding these three chapters. I hope there's something there for you. I especially love the idea of fearing the Lord and learning to walk humbly with them as a basis by which we view everything else. And certainly in Proverbs, these wise sayings point us in that direction. So with that in mind, have a great day, and we'll talk to you again.